James Calloway lived a life most people could only dream of. His days were filled with high-stakes courtroom battles, where he argued cases with precision and skill that left even seasoned judges impressed. As the county's top lawyer, James was known for his sharp mind and unshakable confidence. But it wasn't just his professional success that made him stand out. It was his passion for rare cars that truly set him apart. In his garage sat a masterpiece, a 1965 Shelby Cobra, meticulously restored to perfection. The car gleamed under the soft glow of overhead lights, its curves polished to a mirror finish. Every detail, from the leather seats to the roaring engine, told the story of countless hours spent restoring it to its former glory. To James, this wasn't just a car. It was a piece of history, worth over $1 million. It represented years of dedication, hard work, and an unwavering love for craftsmanship. His home reflected the same level of care as his prized possession. Nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood, James' house was the kind you'd see on postcards: neatly trimmed hedges, flower beds bursting with color, and a white picket fence that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Everything about his property screamed order and discipline. He followed every rule laid down by the Homeowners Association, HOA, ensuring there was never a reason for complaint. After all, James believed in leading by example, but not everyone shared his approach to life. Recently, the HOA had elected a new board member named Karen Whitmore. From the moment she joined, Karen made her presence known. She patrolled the streets like a self-appointed guardian of perfection, armed with a clipboard and an unyielding determination to enforce even the smallest rules. Whether it was reminding neighbors to keep their trash cans hidden or demanding they repaint faded mailboxes, Karen left no stone unturned in her quest for uniformity. At first, James found her antics mildly amusing. Sure, she knocked on doors more often than necessary, but he figured she'd eventually settle into her role. Besides, he had nothing to worry about. He was meticulous when it came to following guidelines. So when Karen showed up at his doorstep one sunny afternoon, wagging her finger about some minor issue, James simply nodded politely and assured her everything was in order. Little did he know, trouble was brewing just beneath the surface. One evening, after working late at the office, James arrived home to find his garage door malfunctioning. With no time to fix it before morning, he decided to park his Shelby Cobra along the curb outside his house. It wasn't ideal, but it was temporary. How much harm could come from leaving it there overnight? What James didn't realize was that this small decision would ignite a firestorm. For Karen, seeing such an expensive car parked on the street felt like a personal affront to her authority. In her eyes, rules existed to be followed without exception, and anyone who dared break them deserved punishment. Unbeknownst to James, his harmless oversight had set the stage for a confrontation neither of them could have anticipated. As night fell over the peaceful neighborhood, shadows lengthened across driveways and sidewalks. Somewhere in the distance, crickets chirped softly, unaware of the storm clouds gathering above. James went to bed that night feeling secure in his world. A world built on hard work, respect, and integrity. But sometimes, even the strongest foundations can crack under pressure. And soon enough, James would discover just how fragile peace can be when someone decides to take matters into their own hands. The next morning, James woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. He groaned, rubbing his eyes as he reached for it, expecting another early call from work. Instead, he saw a notification from his security system, alerting him to movement near his car overnight. Frowning, he dismissed it as nothing serious, probably just a stray cat or a passing jogger, and got ready for the day. As he stepped outside, however, his heart sank. Standing in front of his house was Karen Whitmore, clipboard clutched tightly in one hand, and a look of smug satisfaction plastered across her face. She marched up to him before he could even close the door behind him. "Good morning, Mr. Calloway," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. "I trust you slept well, because I didn't, Imagine my surprise when I saw this asterisk parked illegally last night. She gestured dramatically toward the curb where his Shelby Cobra had been sitting. James blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Excuse me?" he asked, trying to keep his tone calm. "You heard me," Karen replied sharply. "There's a clear rule about street parking after 8 p.m. And whatever this is, was there all night. Do you have any idea how disruptive that is?" James stared at her, incredulous. Disruptive. His car hadn't made a sound. It wasn't blocking anyone's driveway or obstructing traffic. All it had done was sit quietly by the side of the road. Still, he forced himself to remain composed. "It was an oversight," he explained patiently. "My garage door malfunctioned last night, so I parked it temporarily. I plan to move it first thing this morning." Karen crossed her arms, clearly unimpressed. "Rules are rules, Mr. Calloway. If we start making exceptions for everyone, this neighborhood will fall into chaos. I suggest you read the HOA handbook again. Page 47, Section C, Paragraph 3. James bit back a sigh. He knew exactly what paragraph she was referring to. He'd skimmed through the same document countless times during his years in the community. But arguing with Karen felt pointless. She thrived on conflict, feeding off others' frustration like a moth drawn to flame. "I'll take care of it today," he assured her, offering a tight smile. "It won't happen again." But Karen wasn't satisfied. Her lips curled into a thin line as she jotted something down on her clipboard. "See that it doesn't," she said curtly before turning on her heel and walking away. Her heels clicked against the pavement, echoing through the otherwise peaceful morning air. Over the next few days, James tried to brush off the encounter. Surely, Karen would forget about the incident once he moved the car back into the garage. Unfortunately, he underestimated her determination and her grudge. Notes began appearing under his door almost daily, each one more nitpicky than the last. One complained about the color of his garden hose. Too bright. Another criticized the placement of his recycling bin, not aligned properly with the curb. Each note ended with Karen's signature flourish, a bold underline beneath her name, as if daring him to challenge her authority. Neighbors started noticing the tension between them. Some offered sympathetic smiles when they saw James outside, while others whispered behind closed doors. A few even joked that Karen had finally met her match. After all, James wasn't the type to back down easily, especially when he believed he was in the right. Despite the growing animosity, James refused to engage further. He figured Karen would eventually tire of her crusade and move on to torment someone else. What he didn't realize was that Karen's obsession with control had transformed into something far more personal. To her, James represented everything she hated: success, privilege, and an apparent disregard for her self-appointed role as queen of the neighborhood. And in her mind, people like James needed to be put in their place, no matter the cost. Unbeknownst to James, Karen spent hours poring over the HOA handbook, searching for ways to justify her vendetta. She convinced herself that teaching him a lesson wasn't just about enforcing rules. It was about sending a message. By the time Saturday rolled around, her resolve had hardened into something dangerous. Little did James know, his world was about to change forever, all because of a petty disagreement over a parking spot. For now, though, life continued as usual, or so it seemed. James went about his routine, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond his neatly trimmed hedges. The sun shone brightly overhead, birds chirped cheerfully, and the neighborhood appeared as serene as ever. Yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered, waiting for the moment they would boil over. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of day that made James appreciate living in such a peaceful neighborhood. He sipped his coffee on the porch, watching as family strolled by with their dogs or kids riding bicycles down the sidewalk. It was the picture of suburban bliss, or so it seemed. After finishing his cup, James decided to check on his Shelby Cobra. The garage door issue had been fixed late last night, but he hadn't yet moved the car back inside. As he turned the corner toward the curb where he'd left it, his heart stopped. The sleek, gleaming vehicle that once sat proudly on the street was gone. In its place was chaos. Down the road, near the large oak tree at the end of the block, James spotted what remained of his prized possession. His stomach lurched as he hurried closer. The once perfect Shelby Cobra now lay crumpled against the trunk of the tree, its hood smashed inward, windshield shattered, and tires flattened. Oil leaked onto the pavement, creating dark pools beneath the wreckage. It looked like something out of a nightmare. James stood frozen, staring at the ruin before him. His mind raced, trying to piece together how this could have happened. Had someone crashed into it? Was it vandalism? Or worse, had it rolled downhill somehow? Before he could process anything further, a neighbor approached hesitantly. "James," she said softly, I think I saw what happened." He spun around, hope flickering faintly. "What do you mean?" The woman glanced nervously over her shoulder before continuing. "Earlier today, I was walking my dog when I noticed someone pushing her car. At first, I thought maybe it broke down, and they were helping. But then I realized it was Karen." "Karen," James echoed, disbelief etched across his face. The neighbor nodded. She was wearing workout clothes and sunglasses, muttering something under her breath. She pushed it hard enough to get it rolling, and then it just kept going until it hit the tree. I didn't know what to do. I was too shocked to stop her." Anger surged through James, hot and raw. He clenched his fists, struggling to keep his emotions in check. How could anyone, let alone someone who claimed to care about rules and order, do something so reckless, so destructive? This wasn't just any car. It was a priceless artifact, a symbol of years of dedication and passion. As word spread, other neighbors began gathering around the scene. Some expressed horror at the damage, while others whispered about Karen's increasingly erratic behavior. No one dared confront her directly, though. Everyone knew how vindictive she could be if crossed. Later that afternoon, James reviewed the security footage from cameras mounted along the street. What he saw confirmed the neighbor's account. There was Karen, unmistakable even in her disguise of oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap. She leaned into the driver's side of the car, unlocked the emergency brake, and gave it a firm shove. The vehicle rolled forward slowly at first, gaining speed as gravity took hold, until it collided violently with the tree. Watching the clip only fueled James' fury. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. And it wasn't just about teaching him a lesson. It was an act of pure malice. For Karen, this was her chance to assert dominance, to show James that no one was above her authority, not even the county's top lawyer. But what Karen failed to understand was that she had picked the wrong person to cross. James wasn't just another neighbor who would grumble and move on. He was a man who thrived on justice, who built his career on holding people accountable for their actions. Her attempt to humiliate him had backfired spectacularly, and now she would face the full weight of the law. For hours, James sat in silence, replaying the events in his mind. He felt a mix of emotions: sadness over the loss of his beloved car, frustration at Karen's audacity, and determination to make things right. By the time evening fell, he had already begun formulating a plan. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about sending a message. Rules mattered, yes, but so did consequences. And soon enough, Karen would learn exactly what those consequences entailed. By Monday morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing with whispers about what had happened to James' car. The sight of the crumpled Shelby Cobra still lingered in everyone's minds, a grim reminder of how quickly peace could turn into chaos. But for James, there was no time to dwell on emotions. He had spent the weekend gathering evidence, reviewing security footage, and consulting experts who could help him build an ironclad case against Karen. This wasn't just about his car anymore. It was about justice. James knew he couldn't let Karen's actions slide. She had crossed a line, not only by destroying something irreplaceable, but also by thinking she could act with impunity. As the county's top lawyer, James understood the law inside and out, and he intended to use every tool at his disposal to hold her accountable. By mid-morning, he filed multiple charges against her: vandalism, reckless endangerment, and criminal mischief. Each charge carried significant weight, especially when combined with the undeniable proof captured on camera. Word of the lawsuit spread like wildfire. Neighbors who had once tiptoed around Karen now watched with quiet satisfaction as her carefully constructed image began to crumble. Some even came forward to share their own stories of her overbearing behavior, how she'd fined them for minor infractions, demanded unnecessary inspections, or publicly shamed them during HOA meetings. These accounts painted a clearer picture of Karen's personality, someone who thrived on control and intimidation. Karen, meanwhile, seemed blindsided by the backlash. When she heard about the legal action, her face turned pale. At first, she tried to downplay the incident, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she told a few sympathetic neighbors. "I thought it was abandoned or something." But her excuses rang hollow, especially after the security footage surfaced online. Within hours, screenshots of her pushing the car went viral, drawing ridicule from strangers across social media. As the court date approached, James prepared meticulously. He hired forensic specialists to assess the damage to his car and calculate its full value. Experts examined the crash site, noting skid marks and impact angles that proved Karen's intent to cause harm. Every detail mattered, and James left nothing to chance. He wanted the judge and the world to see exactly what Karen had done. The courtroom itself became a spectacle. Reporters packed the benches, eager to document the showdown between the mild-mannered lawyer and the infamous HOA Karen. Spectators whispered among themselves as they waited for the trial to begin. Would Karen admit guilt? Could she possibly defend herself against such overwhelming evidence? When the proceedings finally started, James presented his case with precision and clarity. He walked the jury through each piece of evidence, starting with the security footage. Frame by frame, he highlighted Karen's deliberate actions, pointing out how she unlocked the emergency brake and pushed the car with clear intent. Next, he introduced expert testimony, confirming the extent of the damage and emphasizing the danger posed by her reckless behavior. A child playing nearby could have been injured, or worse, if the car had veered off course. Karen's defense, on the other hand, faltered almost immediately. Her attorney argued that she hadn't realized the car belonged to James and claimed she believed it was illegally parked. But under cross-examination, James dismantled these arguments effortlessly. He produced documents proving the vehicle was registered and insured, leaving no room for doubt about its legitimacy. By the end of the trial, Karen looked visibly shaken. Gone was her usual air of superiority. Instead, she sat slumped in her chair, avoiding eye contact with anyone in the room. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before delivering their verdict: guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the judge announced the sentence. Karen was ordered to pay restitution for the full $1 million value of the car, plus additional punitive damages. For someone like her, who prided herself on perfection and control, this was a devastating blow. As reporters swarmed her outside the courthouse, cameras flashing and microphones thrust toward her face, Karen stammered apologies, her voice trembling with desperation. But it was too late. The damage had been done, not just to James' car, but the fallout from the trial hit Karen like a tidal wave. Overnight, she went from being the self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood rules to its most notorious pariah. The media coverage didn't help. Every outlet within a 50-mile radius seemed determined to turn her into a cautionary tale. Headlines blared phrases like "HOA bully gets what she deserved" and "million-dollar car wreck leads to legal showdown." Even late-night talk show hosts couldn't resist poking fun at her expense, replaying clips of her fumbling through apologies outside the courthouse. For Karen, life became unbearable. Neighbors who once tolerated her nitpicking now avoided her altogether. Some even refused to acknowledge her presence when they passed her on the street. At HOA meetings, which she had once dominated with her clipboard and sharp tongue, attendance dwindled as people sought ways to distance themselves from her toxic influence. Eventually, she resigned from the board, unable to face the icy stares and whispered conversations that followed her everywhere. But the financial burden was perhaps the heaviest blow. Paying $1 million in restitution, plus punitive damages, wasn't something Karen could handle easily. Despite owning a modest home, she lacked significant savings or assets to cover the staggering amount. Her attempts to sell off personal belongings brought in only a fraction of what she owed. Bankruptcy loomed on the horizon, forcing her to make drastic changes. Within months, she quietly put her house up for sale and moved out of the neighborhood, retreating to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Back in the community, things slowly began to heal. Without Karen's constant interference, neighbors breathed easier. Months had passed since the trial, and life in the neighborhood had settled into a rhythm that felt almost foreign to its residents. The absence of Karen's constant policing created an unexpected sense of ease. People no longer tiptoed around rules, afraid of being called out for minor infractions. Instead, they embraced a newfound freedom, decorating their homes with creativity, planting quirky garden ornaments, or painting their front doors bold colors, things Karen would have never allowed. It was as though the entire community exhaled collectively, letting go of years of pent-up tension. For James, the transformation was particularly satisfying. His garage now housed the 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback, gleaming under soft overhead lights. Every evening after work, he spent hours restoring it, meticulously sanding down rust spots, polishing chrome accents, and tuning the engine until it purred like a contented cat. The process wasn't just about building another car, it was therapy, a way to heal from the loss of his beloved Shelby Cobra, while rediscovering joy in craftsmanship. Friends often joked that the Mustang looked better than the original Cobra ever did, but James simply smiled, knowing the real value lay in the journey, not the destination. The neighborhood, too, seemed eager to move forward. With Karen gone, the HOA meetings became shorter and less contentious. New board members were elected, people who prioritized collaboration over control. They encouraged neighbors to share ideas for improving communal spaces, like adding flower beds near the entrance or organizing weekend cleanup events. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere shifted from one of fear to one of friendship. One crisp autumn afternoon, James received a letter in the mail. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, an envelope bearing the county courthouse's return address. But when he opened it, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. Inside was a formal commendation from the local bar association, praising him for his handling of the high-profile case against Karen. The letter highlighted how his actions had set a precedent for accountability within homeowner associations, inspiring others to stand up against unfair treatment. James chuckled softly as he read it. He hadn't expected recognition for doing what he believed was right, but the gesture warmed his heart nonetheless. Later that evening, he framed the letter and hung it on his office wall, next to photos of his cars and plaques from previous legal victories. To him, it wasn't just an award. It was proof that standing firm in your principles could lead to meaningful change. As winter approached, the neighborhood came together for its annual holiday party. Strings of twinkling lights adorned trees lining the streets, and wreaths hung proudly on nearly every door. The event was held at the community center, transformed into a cozy wonderland with garlands, candles, and tables laden with homemade treats. Neighbors mingled freely, sharing laughter and stories without the shadow of judgment looming over them. At one point during the evening, James found himself surrounded by a small group of residents eager to express their gratitude. "We owe you so much," said Sarah, a young mother who lived 2 doors down. "You gave us our neighborhood back." James shook his head modestly. "I didn't do anything special," he replied. "All I did was remind everyone that fairness matters. You're the ones who made this place better." His words earned nods of agreement, But there was also a shared understanding among the group. James had been the catalyst for change. Without his determination to hold Karen accountable, none of this progress would have happened. Later, as James stood outside watching fireworks light up the night sky, he reflected on everything that had transpired. Life had thrown him a curveball, forcing him to confront anger, frustration, and loss. Yet through it all, he'd emerged stronger, not just as a lawyer, but as a person. The experience taught him patience, resilience, and the importance of community. More importantly, it reminded him that sometimes adversity can bring out the best in people. In the distance, children laughed as sparklers traced glowing patterns in the air, while adults exchanged hugs and well wishes for the coming year. The sound of music drifted through the cool breeze, blending harmoniously with the crackle of fire pits scattered throughout the park. For the first time in a long while, James felt truly at peace. He glanced at his watch, realizing it was almost midnight. As the final fireworks exploded overhead, painting the sky in vibrant hues of red, green, and gold, James whispered. As the months rolled on, James began to notice subtle changes, not just in his neighborhood, but within himself. The ordeal with Karen had taught him lessons he hadn't anticipated. While he'd always prided himself on being a man of logic and discipline, this experience revealed something deeper: the power of grace. He realized that holding on to anger or bitterness would only weigh him down, while forgiveness could set him free. It wasn't about excusing Karen's actions. It was about choosing not to let her behavior define him. The Mustang restoration became a symbol of this mindset. Each scratch sanded, each dent hammered out, represented more than physical repair. It mirrored his own emotional recovery. One Saturday afternoon, as he buffed the car's freshly painted hood, a neighbor stopped by to chat. "You know," the man said, leaning against the garage door, "you've inspired a lot of us. Not just with the whole Karen thing, but how you handled everything afterward." James paused, wiping his hands on a rag. "What do you mean?" "Well," the neighbor continued, "most people would have been bitter. They'd hold on to that grudge forever. But you turned it into something positive. You stood up for yourself, sure, but then you moved on. That takes guts." James smiled faintly, touched by the compliment. Truthfully, letting go hadn't been easy. There were nights when frustration kept him awake, replaying the image of his crushed Shelby Cobra in his mind. But over time, he came to understand that dwelling on what was lost wouldn't bring it back. Instead, he focused on what remained and what could be built anew. By spring, the neighborhood felt almost unrecognizable. Gone were the rigid rules and stifling conformity enforced by Karen. In their place blossomed creativity and connection. Flower gardens overflowed with color, children played freely without fear of reprimand, and weekend block parties became a regular occurrence. Even the HOA meetings, once dreaded affairs filled with tension, evolved into lively discussions where neighbors shared ideas and celebrated progress. One evening, as James sat on his porch watching the sunset, he noticed Sarah, the same young mother who'd thanked him at the holiday party, walking toward him. She carried a plate covered with foil, which she handed over with a warm smile. "Thought you might like some lasagna," she said. "It's my way of saying thanks again. For everything." James accepted the gift gratefully, struck once more by the kindness surrounding him. "You don't have to keep thanking me," he replied gently. "I'm just glad things are better now. For all of us." Sarah nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Still, I think we needed someone like you to remind us that standing up for ourselves doesn't mean tearing others down. You showed us there's another way." Her words lingered long after she left, resonating deeply. James realized that his actions had sparked a ripple effect, encouraging others to confront challenges with courage and fairness. Whether it was speaking up during an HOA meeting or resolving personal disputes, neighbors began approaching conflicts differently, with open minds and willingness to listen. That summer marked the first anniversary of the infamous HOA Karen incident, though no one referred to it so dramatically anymore. To celebrate, the community organized a special event, a classic car show hosted right in the cul-de-sac. James proudly displayed his restored Mustang alongside other vintage vehicles owned by residents. Kids marveled at the shiny chrome details, while adults exchanged stories of road trips and restoration projects. At the center of it all stood James, chatting with friends and strangers alike. Someone snapped a photo of him beside the Mustang, capturing a moment of pure contentment. For the first time in years, he felt truly connected to his passion, his community, and himself. Later that night, as the festivities wound down, James took a quiet walk around the block. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers, and the stars twinkled brightly overhead. He thought about how far they'd come. From a fractured neighborhood, ruled by fear, to a united one built on trust. And though he never wished for anyone to endure what he had, he couldn't deny that the journey had shaped him in profound ways. Life, he mused, was full of unexpected twists. Some broke you, while others made you stronger. The key was learning to adapt, to find meaning even in chaos. As he turned back toward his house, the lights glowing warmly through the windows, James felt a deep sense of gratitude. For second chances, for resilience, and for the simple joy of belonging. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest victories weren't about winning. They were about growing. And grow they had, together.